I would like to talk a bit about the Excel custom reporting features and especially the advanced properties. So in the advanced properties part of the toolbar, you will find a number of capabilities that I will walk you through that will allow you to format the design template such that you can control how things are laid out in the final report. And I'll go through those one at a time. Let's get started. I'm here in the MassHunter Report Templates Quant Letter directory, and I'm going to use the ISTD report. I'll make a copy of that, which I highly recommend, and then I'll open it in Excel. And what I'll see in Excel is the template information as well as the add-in. And I'm going to talk specifically about the advanced properties, which will help you lay out the final report so it looks like what you want it to be. All right, let's take a look at the advanced properties. Here's the add-in toolbar. Advanced properties right here. I'll click on Advanced Properties and take a look at the first tab called Template. Now the template tells me what kind of report type I've got. In this demo, I'm only going to be concerned with the quantitative templates. There are other kinds available. The next part of the design worksheet, Advanced Properties, is which design worksheet am I currently on? So I will go down here and click on the tab that gives me the design summary worksheet, and you'll notice that's an active worksheet, and it tells me, can I exclude this from the report? And in this case, I'm going to do that. So you will not see the design summary produce anything in the final report. I'm going to focus on the design calibration worksheet. And again, here's the design sample worksheet. I'm going to exclude that from the report. In the next part of the advanced properties, I can see the text tab. Now in the case right here, this header is unassociated text. If I go down to this bullet right here, I see that this header is associated with the table or graphics that follows. I can see that from the advanced properties. I can also see that by the comment that's associated with that cell, associate below. What that means is when this is formatted, the formatting will keep this section of the header and the table together in a page break situation. Advanced properties. There's also graphics. So I'm going to click on this graphic right here for the sample chromatogram, and you'll notice that it shifts the tab to the table, and that graphics information tells me that this graphic of sample information is full page. Now the graphics are sized to 1/2 and 1/3. The calibration table, for example, is sized by default as 1/2, and the specific extracted ion chromatogram graphics are sized to 1/3. If you keep the graphics to their original size, they look the best, although you can stretch them here potentially to create versions of the sizing. My suggestion is to keep them at their default sizes. Let's go to the calibration worksheet and investigate the advanced properties and the table tab. Now the table tab controls a lot of the formatting that's going to happen. So I'm going to look at this particular row here, and the first thing you'll notice is you'll see that the information that controls the formatting is stored in the comments. And you can see that by mousing over, or potentially you could say view the comments, and you'll see how many there are. What I would suggest is using the Advanced Properties tab or mousing over to see what formatting has been applied. So let's focus on the compound ID and see how it's set up. First, it's hide this header row. So it's really the contents that are imported, not the header row that I'm going to show. So this is hide the header row and associate with the following table and graphics which we've talked about. And below gives you the set of columns and if there's any properties associated with those particular columns. In this case, compound ID is hidden. Shows you again here that it's hidden. At the sample design sheet, the row here, let me demonstrate a table property. Table contents as text 1 column. So what we've got here is in this particular table, it says transpose 1. And what that is going to do is to take each of these individual columns from this row and put them on one line at a time. So if I do process the report here, you would see in that sample report, you will see that each one of those pieces of information has individually been put on its own line, and that is the ability of the table properties, table contents as text. So let me see if I can show you that in the final report here. Going to the sample. Here I've got acquisition time, data file, acquisition method file, sample name, sample info, sample type, level, and sample position. Just each one of those pushed out and formatted on its own row. That's quite useful with handling the sample information. Look at the other columns in that calibration table, specifically the sample ID column. If I look at the sample ID column right here, you'll see that it has a filter that's associated with it. The filter value says bottom 1. And the reason that these have been added is they're extensions to the setting of the Excel advanced filters. The reason for this is in a batch, we only need to see one calibration table, one calibration graphic, since each sample shares the same calibration treatment. So here I've filtered that and will only show you one of those graphics. That's the filter that's been applied to this particular column here, which associates each of the graphics and the calibration information. You'll notice that they all have applied filter. In addition, I would like to point out that in this particular column, I'm using a formula. So going to the formula column, I can see if I drop down 1 to row 13, I will see the formula, which gives me the on the report the statement whether it's an ISTD compound or a target compound that's in this list. And that formula is designated here, as you see in the comment, as a formula, and the formula exists by clicking on the row just below that. So again, the information for the formatting is held in the comments, and as the add-in processes it, it uses that formatting to produce the final report. Okay, let's try one of the trickiest pieces. I'm going to go over to the design sample sheet and go down to the part that controls the ISTD relationship. Over here, I've got the ISTD. And you'll notice on the column properties, as well as the comment, this has been labeled an ISTD. The reason that you see a XPath expression in that comment is because this trails or traverses from the compound to its related ISTD to present that information in the report on one line. So let me repeat that. A compound in the ISTD report has an associated ISTD compound, so it follows that relationship in the data set, as you see from the expression there, to put that information about the ISTD on the same line as the target compound. So for some column that has been designated ISTD information, that's a very special relationship that's part of the template. My suggestion is that you use existing templates that already have that relationship set up if you need to have target and ISTD information on the same line. A quite useful feature in the formatting is the with command. So if I look specifically at, let's say, the data path name, I'll see that the width is restricted to 50. The reason for that is the data path name could be potentially longer than 50 units. A unit is, as the report is processed, the columns are set to a particular width, and there's only so much room in the width of the report. What I'm doing here is restricting that length so that it will wrap around on the report and I won't end up pushing out another horizontal page when the report is printed. Again, you'll see here that the width for these columns is restricted to 15 so that they all line up. That's something that can be quite useful as you try to get the information onto a particular line, and you'll see that it's used quite often in the templates. Another useful trick I'd like to show you is leaving a space where you want one. In this case, let's take a look at the sample report and the acquisition time. Here I've got the label, and here I've got the imported XML mapped acquisition time, and as explained in a different section, I've got a formula over here that transposes that string into the date-time string that I want. Now, what I'd like to have is some space between here, the label, and the actual date-time. And the way I've accomplished that here is to have a space. So in this column called space holder, I look at the formatting for that font, and I'll see that the color is actually white, meaning nothing will show up there. So if I process this report, you will see how nicely the acquisition time lines up with the rest of the sample information. So let me do that for you. And as I look at that sample report, you'll see here's the acquisition time with the string and the string getting formatted. And here is the final formatted report. And I see acquisition time with the space that I left here with that blank formatting white trick, and then the rest that are in the transposed lined up there very nicely. More complex point to illustrate here. On the quantitation results, I've got several what I'll call filters here that are associated with the database. Sample ID, compound ID, ISTD, compound ID. And on these filters, I've got filter non-blanks, which makes sense if you think about it. I just want to see compounds that have an ISTD. Here is something that is worth explaining, the peak ID. Now the background of this is there are multiple peaks that can be found for a particular compound. Now there is only one hit, and the peak ID that is the hit is called the primary peak ID. And again, this is filtered as non-blank, and this is a reference to the table, the target compound table, which points to the peak, which is the hit. That is taken care of here and filtered out, so you only see the peak that was used for the quantitation results. That is shown here in the primary hit peak ID, which is filtered as non-blanks, and this reference in the database. Again, my recommendation is that you find the report that is closest to the report that you want to create and use that as a starting point where this kind of navigation is already set up for you. I'm just explaining how that works internally. Thank you for your attention.